Hi, it's Scotty Bennett with Texas Nights on Coke FM. Thanks for joining me. And we're here with Django Walker at the Saxon Pub, this iconic place, the iconic name, Django Walker. And we're talking about his dad, Jerry Jeff Walker, who's being inducted this Saturday in the Texas Heritage Songwriters Association Induction. And it's Paramount Theater. It's going to be a huge show. But having Django here is extremely special because usually we don't want to spend the whole time talking about your dad because you in your own right are an incredible musician. But today, let's talk about your dad.
I love it. Let's do the whole thing.
So you were born early 70s, right? Like me?
And for early 80s.
You were born in the 80s?
I was an 81
Man, I thought
kid.
you were closer to my age. Well, sorry about that.
No, it's all, my sister was 78.
78, okay.
So we're kind of right there.
So your dad really kicked off the cosmic cowboy movement in the early 70s with the original Coke AM and the Waylon and Willie and the Boys, Jerry Jeff, that group. What did you know? When did you know that there was something special going on when you were growing up?
Like growing up, really, the first time I noticed was high school for me. But I think I was just unaware. Like I used to tell the story that I was in middle school and we would go to Green Hall.
Yeah.
And they had that basketball goal on the outside. If you remember, it's like taped up to the pole.
Right.
Well, I would take a basketball out there, and while my dad is sold out Green Hall, I was hustling people, like drunk people, on the dirt path there with me and my best friend.
Like, Daddy,
Just.
I made more than you did this tonight.
Yeah. Like I get done, I have like $35 because me and my buddy Just had beaten two like drunk college kids.
That's great.
Came to see my dad play, and I didn't even realize what really was going on as far as like, you know he's playing. People are there to see him. It's kind of a big deal or whatever. But high school, I remember walking up, and I walked past, my sister was a senior when I was a freshman, and I walked past the senior parking lot, and I can hear like, "Hi, Buckaroos," or something playing, and everybody had one of those oval Jerry Jeff Walker stickers, and like I walked past, and it was me and a couple buddies, and they were like, "Hey, Django, hold up," and they were like, it's like one of those, "Hey, you other kids can keep moving along."
Right.
And I was kind of
You were instantly a cool kid.
Yeah, like it was sort of like, and I was like, okay, something's not right here. And then you'd see him at your dad's concert, and then you started being like, oh wow, he's a pretty big deal.
Well, I keep using the word iconic, talking about the Saxon Pub and your dad, and growing up back then, because I was born in 1970, and I was born in Austin. A lot of people aren't born in Austin; they get here as fast as they can. But this town has changed so much, and knowing. I was, of course, under 10 years old, and I could tell that there's something about the music in this town. We would go to the original Hills Cafe, and we would go eat there, and you hear the Charlie Pride on the jukebox, the Gatlin Brothers, the Willie Nelson, the Jerry Jeff, and that's when it struck me how special Austin was. And it was always seemed kind of a sleepy little town, and then look where we are now. It's not a sleepy little town anymore. We've lost our identity, kind of, but bringing it back to your dad and this induction. In your own words, how important was he to Texas songwriting and the whole Texas music movement that started here in Austin?
Well, we were just talking about it, that like before me and my dad, when I was on my way down here, was like, there was, the way you did it before was that like before my father really was like, you went up to Nashville, you played some of your songs, someone heard you, you got a record deal, you went out and did it. Nobody really was doing the whole like, hey, let's just put a cool little band together and let's just go and put out some songs, and like everything that they probably said was bad.
Yeah.
Let's do that. And let's just do it our way.
Right.
And I think he's one of the pioneers of doing that, like putting a guitar on your back and riding a motorcycle around the country and just playing songs that you had heard and that you believed in, cowboy songs, like folk songs when he met all those street singers in New Orleans. Like, nobody was doing that sort of stuff. And
you mentioned, you were telling stories before we actually started taping this about your dad and Jimmy Buffett and your dad and Rodney Crowell and all the misconnections and the connections that happened. Otherwise, we may not have a Jimmy Buffett like he is now. We may not have a lot of these songs because just something that happened in a bar in Austin or at the lake, or these little bitty stories that people run across each other and say something, and all of a sudden Christopher Cross is writing Sailing here in Austin, and it's just amazing, all these stories. When you grew up, what were there stories like that about your dad? I mean, tell the Jimmy Buffett story.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand is that my dad introduced Buffett to Key West by, I don't know, it was a 56 Packard or something like that Buffett had. And he was like, hey, man, you need to go check out this cool scene that's going on down in Key West. And they drove down there together, hang out for a while. My dad kind of got a little bit like, I'm over this or whatever. And then Buffett was the one that told him about Austin, because he was like, hey, man, you need to go to Austin and meet this guy, Guy Clark. He's in Houston, and Rodney Crowell and Towns Van Zandt, because they're doing some really cool stuff that way. And then I don't know if it was that same time that he maybe stopped in New Orleans, and that's the Mr. Bojangles' time. I can't remember the era and time, but I know that my dad was apparently the one that told Buffett about Key West, and Buffett told him about Austin.
Can you imagine if that connection hadn't happened, how different music, how little the whole landscape could have changed. And Mr. Bojangles, your dad's first big hit, right?
Yep.
And the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band recorded it. He recorded it. I mean, that's probably been recorded, how many times now?
Oh,
it's an incredible
it's
song.
one of the most recorded songs, and I think he keeps getting BMI awards and stuff for it all the time. So
it's pretty cool, and him being inducted, it's got to be special, because he not only is a songwriter, he's an entertainer. And you growing up, when you decided you wanted to be a musician, did you ride his coattails, or did you say, I want to do my own thing? Or how did you? I mean, 'cause I remember our personal story. I had you play at Dallas Nightclub when I was the music manager there, and you're kind of just getting going. I think you maybe had just gone to Texas or still at Texas. I don't know if you went to Texas, but you're a huge Texas fan.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I remember most is you're just a huge Longhorn, and you started playing around the clubs. But did you try to do it on your own, or did you? Hey, Daddy, I'd have been like, Dad, hook me up.
I didn't want it. Like I can remember being like, I don't want that, and I regret it sometimes, because I go like the amount of shows that I turned down and missed playing with my father, because I was like, no, I'm only going to do 4 a year. That's what I told myself.
Yeah.
Like, if somebody wants to do a festival with Jerry, Jeff, and Django Walker, it's only going to be 4 times a year, and I'm going to pick them, and blah, blah, blah. And I look back now where I get to play with him on almost all the shows that he plays. I'm in his band, and I get to sing harmony.
That's great.
And, kind of play backup or whatever, and I go, man, I wish I would have done that more, because we would have had a whole heck of a lot more memories, and I wouldn't have, I think in my mind, I went, all right, either I'm going to make it as me, or I'm not going to make it as me. Nobody's going to know who he is until they find out later or whatever. And then it was great in a way, because then I did have a lot of people respect me for that, but then at the same time I was going like, what the hell with it?
Well, it's good that you got to prove yourself, and that's great, and you're a great musician in your own right, but a lot of musicians try to distance themselves. It's almost kind of being a rebellious teenager. You don't want to do what your parents say, but then eventually you figure out, hey, they were right the whole time.
Yeah, for me, it was more of I don't know. I wanted it to be like, all right, this dude's got good songs, and he's doing his thing, and he can sing, and he can do that.
Yeah.
As opposed to anything else. I loved playing with him. I used to tear me up a little bit, that I would always be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm good. I'm going to pass on that or whatever.
Man.
But I felt like in my heart that I was like, you know what? I'm going to go out on these roads, and I'm going to bang it out like every other band has to do.
Yeah.
And I think there's a respect factor to that too, of being like, you know what? I'm going to go play at Hanks and McKinney, and I remember one time we drove through Dallas 6 times in one weekend, and I go, good. Well, it makes but I
earning your stripes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like everybody else would have done, and I think there's a respect factor.
Well, one thing he did put on you was your cool name. I mean, because Django Walker is a name that, when I first met you, I immediately knew, that's got to be Jerry Jeff's kid. The name Django is just, it's iconic, like that name, Jerry Jeff Walker. So having that name helped, but having your dad helped. And tell me, is there anything else you want to talk about to the people that are listening tonight and that are coming to the Texas Heritage Songwriters induction? He's going to get his name on the wall, part of the Hall of Fame, which is well-deserved and maybe a little overdue. What else would you like to tell people here of Texas about Jerry Jeff?
Tell them about Jerry Jeff. I think that he's a true singer-songwriter, well-deserving of this. I think there's no better person that went out there and truly lived life and met characters and wrote songs about characters and painted these beautiful pictures about characters that are still to this day. And I tell people that's what I always try and do. I've learned from that, so I always go let's go somewhere. Let's go meet somebody. Let's sit somewhere. Let's talk to somebody. I'm very much like that person who's like my father. I always sit at the bar when I go eat at restaurants and stuff, because of my father, of meeting characters. and like you talk to somebody you never met, and the next thing you know, they're telling you this great thing, or they tell you this great line, and you that's what he did well, and he still does. He still loves to go. He goes to Medici Coffee every morning and just talks to a bunch of people, and you know, like I think that's what I want them to know is he's like the true gypsy singer-songwriter as far as...
Almost a movie character. He's almost something you see, and it was almost a Forrest Gump, maybe, that he always was a connection there everywhere.
A true liver of life, and, you know, like I think...
And one of the pillars of Austin, Texas, because Austin still needs people like that to go to the coffee shop every morning, that still sit next to somebody at a bar, that the places that are still here while they last, we need that here in Austin.
Characters.
But,
we need characters, but we need like true real life characters
that
are, I think that's a
genuine.
Genuine, and that are, you know, there's a couple of them that are still out there, I think. You know, even in our generation, and maybe a little generation below me, that they're still out there, and I hope that they're still continuing to like, look, just because we have social media and modern technology and all these kind of things doesn't mean that you can't go out and be this like gypsy songman.
Well, it's good to hear from my generation, which is your generation, and maybe there's another generation after us that are learning from the people that came before us, which is your dad, the Whalens, the Willies, Merles, that we're missing, and let's keep it alive. And the Texas Heritage Songwriters, that's all they do is they keep it alive. So we hope you join us Saturday, the Paramount Theater, and appreciate Django coming in and talking to us here at the Saxon Pub. And we'll see you Saturday night and see your dad.
Amen. Thanks.
Thanks, sir.
Yep. Thank you.